This morning we wake up to this news.
Which we knew was coming.
We knew it was coming, but we didn't know it was coming today.
No.
And I was saying to the guys that I wonder if you will have the same reaction as I did. My reaction, in short, which I've said on the show, this is gigantic, this is seismic, this is game-changing.
Yeah.
They are going to change boxing as we know it.
Interesting.
And I can explain why.
Okay.
When you heard about this, did you feel the same way? What was your reaction?
It wasn't that initially. It grew to become that. As sort of the next sort of 10 minutes and then the minutes passed and the minutes passed, I was like, okay, wait, what does this mean? And then I started to kind of listen to the language used, especially by Turki when he said crush, we're going to crush all the other promotions. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
But what, one second, the promotions you've been working with, as in Queensbury and Matchroom and Golden Boy and Top Rank, like what does that mean? I find it interesting. I find it puzzling.
What's puzzling?
What does it mean? Does it mean, okay, or does it almost mean kind of what PBC tried to do, where they were trying to create a PBC belt and they tried to sign every single fighter and they very well nearly exceeded in doing so? Does this mean that he's trying to literally take over the sport of boxing? So all the fighters, all of them are in this league. Do fighters immediately start jumping ship and signing to him? Because to be fair, we're in a world of boxing now where no fighter has an 8-fight contract anymore.
Yeah.
Most fighters are kind of fight-by-fight contracts. I mean, does Shakur Stevenson, who's only got one fight left with Matchroom, after that fight, does he go and join his TKO promotions? What does it mean for Eddie? What does it mean for Frank? Are they now on the phone with each other now saying, okay, we're not accepting this. We have to fight back?
Right.
Or do they jump in bed with it? I find the whole thing.
There's certainly a lot of questions.
There is.
But here's what I know for sure.
Okay.
What I know for sure is they're going to put on these 4 mega events over the next 2 years.
Yeah.
And the first one could very well be Canelo Crawford. And so now we get a little more insight as to why they were fighting so hard to not have Canelo fight Jake Paul. There's a history there with the TKO guys and Jake Paul and Nikisa Badarian. No. You're not going to go fight Jake Paul and then fight for us.
100%.
We'll add another fight to the deal. You'll fight William Skull May 3rd in Riyadh, and then you'll fight for us at Allegiant Stadium. That will be maybe like their first entry. But in addition to that, they're going to have this promotion, this league as they're calling it, where they're going to sign fighters kind of from the ground up. You know, the Keyshawn Davis's post-Olympics, the Pat Brown's post-Olympics.
Do you think that's what they're going to do?
Yes, I know that's what they're going to do.
So you don't think they're signing established fighters?
It's a mix. But you know how they keep promoting this guy, King Callum Walsh?
Yeah.
Which the boxing establishment says this guy ain't really the man, right? But those are the types of guys that they're going to sign, try to build up. They'll populate the mega cards with these guys and hope that if you're tuning in to watch Canelo Crawford perhaps on a Netflix and you happen to see a King Callum Walsh fight, then you'll follow him to the league. But now here's where it gets seismic. That's just an idea. That's a concept like PBC. This is where it gets seismic. They're not playing with WBC and IBF and IBO and WBA and WBO. They're not playing with these guys anymore. Yeah. Dana said it himself. Our belts don't have the 3 letters attached to it. Now, it'll be their 3 letters. Whatever this promotion is, TKO, whatever name.
Wait, are they banking on the fact that the fighters won't want to win these titles anymore?
Yes.
I just don't see how fighters, I don't agree with
that. And this is what
I don't see how fighters don't care about that. I feel like
if you get them from the ground up, if you get them from their entry into the world of pro boxing and you're shaking hands with Dana White, with Turki, with Nick Khan, and they're like, we're going to make you into a star. Just look at what we did with those guys in MMA. They didn't need sanctioning bodies. We're going to do the same thing here. He keeps saying it. Everyone keeps asking me what the model is. It's the same model. It's the same model that they use in pro wrestling, which is 1 league, 1 belt. What's the richest prize in pro wrestling? The WWE Heavyweight Championship. What's the richest prize in UFC? The UFC X Division title, right?
Yeah.
And what's going to be the richest prize in their boxing world? This. Now, is this going to happen overnight? No. Is Eddie and Frank going to just lay down their arms and be like, sure, guys, come in? No. It's not going to happen. And I could imagine the sanctioning bodies almost teaming up with the promoters and being like, we have to stop this from happening. But they're going to try to there isn't a sort of Ali Act in the UK, right?
No.
There isn't anything like that.
Yeah.
They're going to try to get rid of that. And if they're successful, great. And if they're not, it's still going to be what they're going to try to do. This is gigantic. Dana's always talked about getting into boxing, and that was going to be big. But when you think about TKO as an entity teaming up with Turki to do this, who has endless funds, pockets as deep as anything, it's
the biggest kickback here is trying to sign the fighters. Because I get what you mean about signing fighters from the bottom up, right? It's easier as opposed to maybe getting the established ones, which again will cost a lot more than the fighters coming up. But I can't see how, even if you do, say you sign an Olympian coming through right now, right? From Paris Olympics, you sign an Olympian. Their dream is still to become a world champion. I don't believe that their dream is just about money. I do believe their dream is still to become a world champion.
I think it's an old dream.
No.
Now, to be clear, you're not going to convince an AJ or an Usyk or a Crawford. And when I say Crawford, I don't mean like Crawford's going to maybe fight on this card for them, but he's not going to like completely leave that dream. He wants to be undisputed champion at 168. You're not going to convince the old guard.
Are you trying to say you think, and by the way, we're talking in 10 years' time, right?
Yeah. It's going to take...
You think that will happen where fighters won't care about the traditional four governing bodies?
Yes, and they are going to convince them that this is an old way of thinking. This is an archaic way of thinking. Just look how successful the UFC is.
No, but there was nothing before the UFC. So it's easy to kind of say, okay,
these are the questions that the fighter should say.
Yeah.
But this is what they're going to tell them. I know the pitch is this. Look at what we did with the UFC. Look at what the WWE is. We don't need anyone else. We don't need to have these. We don't need someone to come in and tell us what we're going to do with our belt. Like, oh, Usyk Fury, and then we're going to take that IBF belt away because the IBF said so.
This is why your language surprised me when you said seismic. This is what you mean by seismic.
Yeah.
Then
we're not going to listen to
the governing bodies are gone.
In their world.
In their world.
They're going to occupy. They're going to.
Well, no, they're gone then. They're gone. If they're gone in their world, and I think that world is the future of boxing, then they're gone.
Well, Eddie could still work with them. Frank could still work with them. Oscar could still work with them. And I would imagine that those older generation guys...
Then it gets even more...
fractured?
The waters get a bit more cloudy and muddy.
No, they're going to say...
Because over there, then, there is a world champion, and the WBC or the WBA have given them a belt, but then TKO have a world champion over here.
Yeah.
I mean, are these world champions going to...
They're going to say the water's nice here. It's nicer over here. They're going to say that those belts mean nothing. They're going to say those belts are like the way they talk about the PFL belt or the One Championship belt or the Pride belt back in the day or the Elite XC Strike Force. Our belts mean something. They are our belts, our rankings.
Well, I think
you're not the best.
History, and this is why I like the comparison that you make between ONE FC and Pride. The UFC, although Pride has been around a long time, UFC was still the first.
Yeah.
So UFC has that history. The TKO will never have the history of a WBA, which has been around since, I don't know, it's 104 years old.
Yeah.
It won't have that. So you'd always be able to sell the history and look at the champions. The names that are attached to those belts being the biggest names of the sport. Like you're saying, okay, you can be like Muhammad Ali. You can be like Floyd Mayweather. Even the kids coming through the Olympics that weren't even born when these guys were fighting will know of these guys. So you'll always be able to sell them that history. I think it's a great wake-up call for these governing bodies. I think the governing bodies have been trash for years. I think the way in which they rule in terms of someone just jumping up the ladder, so to speak, when that person's automatically fighting, all of a sudden they're number 2 ranked. Like they weren't even in the rankings.
Right.
The sanctioning fees that fighters have to pay, the interim belts, the international belts.
This is what they're going to sell them on. This is all crap, and you don't have to deal with any of it. And you're going to come train at the Performance Center, and we're going to get you the best promotion, and we're going to put you on these weekends. You know, September 12th. Turkey said September 12th today on the Pat McAfee show.
Sorry.
September 12th.
Kind of let slip. I don't think he was there. Yeah.
Nah, Turkey does whatever the hell he wants. September 12th is a Friday. Is it possible they're going to do a Friday Canelo Crawford and then a Saturday UFC 3, whatever it will be, 21? Like, you know, and they're going to promote them on UFC. I mean, we even see King Callum. And I keep talking about him because it was so funny in that video with the announcement. Yeah. All the B-roll footage is of King Callum watching the face. Isn't that crazy? Because they don't have a lot of fight footage, boxing footage. But what they did with him is they pick a guy who they think, okay, we could build him up. He's Irish. He's got a look. He's got a style, whatever. And they're going to try to find those guys, and they're going to populate these mega cards with those guys, and then hope that they then find the next. You know, etc.
Again, with the language used, and I can only go with what's been said or what's been written. That there seems to be this suggestion that Dana White is the guy to fix boxing, like he's the best.
He promoter. Says it.
Yeah, and I'm like, as good as what Dana White's done with the UFC, there is nowhere on earth that Dana White's a better boxing promoter than Freddie or Frank. I'm sorry, Eddie or Frank. I'm just not accepting it. Just because, and I go on what have you done for me lately, your history, and Eddie and Frank have put on the biggest shows in the world. It's like the same way I wouldn't say Eddie and Frank are bigger than Bob Arum. I can only go with the history. And Dana White's history in terms of boxing promotion is null and void.
Well, it's non-existent.
Yeah, null and void.
But he's going to say I'm the best combat sports promoter.
I don't
and
know.
so if I did it there, I could do it here.
I don't think he's even that anymore. I think he was that. I think there was a time when his ceiling was through the roof. I mean, you watch MMA way more than I do. Even sort of in terms of seeing the best fight the best in UFC, it doesn't happen anymore. We don't see it as much as we used to.
No, the business model has changed.
Yeah,
he always used to say that we would never turn into boxing. It will never be just like a top-heavy card. It will never just be like...
It is that.
Oh, it's 1,000% that. But guess what? The biggest star in the sport is the UFC. There is only one combat sports entity on the planet, if we're going to exclude WWE from this. Yeah. If we aren't, they could be included. Where they say the UFC is coming to town for either a fight night or 312, and they're selling out.
It doesn't matter who's on the card. It's the UFC.
Matchroom can't do that. Top Rank can't do that. If Golden Boy says we're coming to Southern California, everyone's like, yeah, and with who? If Matchroom says we're coming to London, the O2, yeah, and with who?
Okay, and you're on the thinking, because I'm not, that TKO can say they're coming to town and everyone gets excited like it's the UFC.
It will take some time. It will take some time. But yes, he is going to back. Now, it's going to take some time. Look, they did the Callum Walsh fight in Ireland. We just had my friend Pete on in Dublin. He's like, they were giving out tickets. Yeah. And he was there to promote it. Like, he actually made the trip. Yeah. And so it's not just fait accompli that it's like, hey, we're open for business. But with their funding, with their promotional skills, with their production as well. Let's be honest. He was doing an interview earlier.
Stephen A. Smith, one?
Yeah, First Take, he said his son went to the Barclays Center this past weekend, and the production was great. And he's right. It's not great.
It wasn't.
It drags. He jokes that people are doing podcasts in between the fights and stuff like that. They put on the best sort of like bang, 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 right? Some of these shows drag. Some of these shows, we talk about the weigh-in sometimes. Tank Davis showed up, I think, an hour and a half late. To the weigh-ins. They would never allow that. Yeah. It's ruling with an iron fist.
Boxing hasn't helped itself in this situation. There's so much wrong with the sport that someone's come in and said, okay, we can clean it up very quickly, and Turkey's done that. And it's almost allowed someone to come in the door because there are so many problems. Yeah. And because there are problems that it seemed like couldn't be fixed. And all of a sudden, someone's come in and said, okay, we can fix it. This is what we can do. We can give you the biggest fights, and fans have gone, yay! And what Turkey does have, and what he does so well, is Eddie and Frank are both good at it, but Turkey has this relationship with fighters where he speaks to them, he calls them. When everyone goes together for Riyadh season, he sits down with them personally. Yeah. So you can only imagine if he's trying to sign these fighters, and he knows what deals they're on. He knows exactly how many fights they've got left in their deal. It's just a conversation of, do you want to come over? And they'll be like, yeah, look at the way you treated us in Saudi. Look at the money we're getting. We're coming over. Yes. My concern is, and I think I always had this concern when one giant controls a sport like the way UFC has, over the years, is fighter pay. Yeah. That's been the biggest problem for UFC fighters, right? And it's something that's now that it's come out and everyone now speaks about it. It's all well and good, this TKO thing, but let's just fast forward 20 years and it's the only promotion, right? And it's killing it. And there are no more, or there are small ones. Fighters are going to lose out on this because the pay that fighters get, because, well, go there then. If you don't like us, go over there where you know you're not going to get paid anything. Or you're going to get paid crumbs. You're going to have to stay here because this is where all the money is.
I wonder if they're going to have to change that a little bit.
With Dana White at the helm?
They're a guy who...
He sips some tea as he says this.
A guy who enters the UFC gets 10-10. Like a low-level guy. Like, what does a curtain jerker get on a Matchroom card? He's probably not getting more than 10-10.
No, but
and when I say 10-10, I say
you are correct. 10,000 to show, 10,000 to win. You're right.
Which is a BS model as well. That model doesn't exist in boxing.
Yeah, and you're right. They're probably going to get 4,000 or 5,000. But their jump to go past 10-10 is just like that. Okay. Whereby in the UFC, I mean, someone could be literally 10-10 or 20-20.
Look, what does Johnny Fisher get?
Oh, I don't want to talk about a man's pocket, but Johnny Fisher's way higher than that. Okay, we're talking good, strong 6 figures.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, a Johnny Fisher in the UFC ain't making that.
There you go.
Right.
There you go.
Like what? Yeah, like some. It's by the way, don't listen to me. Don't listen to me. In the middle of the show, we had Lou DiBella, Lou DiBella, Hall of Fame boxing promoter, tweet at me regarding this, and he's been a little kind of like getting over boxing, and it seems like there's some hard feelings, but he's been in the game for decades. This is what he tweeted to me. We could take a look at it right over here in a matter of moments. That's me on camera. Hello, everyone.
Guys. Sorry, not right now.
Not right now?
Not
we
right
can't
now.
do it?
Sorry, guys.
Okay.
Not everyone back here.
Tell me.
What are they on break over there? What's going on?
They're cooking.
They're cooking. Okay, here's the Thanks. Maybe Frank can pull it up. Okay, this is the tweet. I'll read it to you. I have it in front of me. Paradigm of existing boxing is failing and being redefined. Couldn't be more seismic. And I told you this entire shift in the model was coming. No surprise that Turkey aligns with Nick and Dana. And the timing couldn't be better. Boxing people, we did this to ourselves. Sport couldn't have been more poorly governed. Those who don't get it because they are without vision or dumb, which is one of the reasons the old house of cards is falling. This isn't evolution, it's revolution. This is what he wrote to me.
That's interesting. And you know, I think that relates more to boxing over here in America. Like once HBO kind of waved the white flag and said, okay, we're not losing any more money in this sport, and they decided to walk away, I was like, oh, HBO? I grew up with HBO.
Yeah.
And then when Showtime did exactly the same thing, I was like, okay, what's going on? And Top Rank still with ESPN, it obviously comes to an end in a few months. I'm like, okay, this is mega over here. It's not so much the case in the UK. I know Sky Sports still show it, TNT, to an extent with Queensbury, and obviously
that's coming to an end.
That's coming to an end.
Yeah.
But I almost feel like if Queensbury wanted to stay, they could have stayed with TNT. So in the UK, it's still quite big. There are stadium fights, there are shows every single week. Over here, and I mean, me and you spoke about what's going on with fights in New York. Like we haven't seen a big fight at MSG since Serrano Taylor. So over here in America, I feel like boxing's almost destroyed itself. The stars don't fight, and the stars that do fight don't talk. PBC seem to have signed everyone at one stage, and those fighters seem to have made so much money for doing nothing and then giving us one fight a year. Boxing killed itself over here. And it became, over the last couple of years, a sport just in Europe, where it felt like everything was happening in Europe if it wasn't Canelo or Gervonta.
Yep.
So I kind of agree with Lou, but I think Lou's referring to boxing in America as opposed to boxing worldwide.
That is a good point. I've talked about it all the time. I can't believe midday on Talk Sport, the network you work for. You guys are talking boxing. It's football and then boxing.
Yeah.
It's crazy to me. And it's sometimes not even like high level.
No, we'll get anyone on.
Yes.
And it'll do great numbers.
Like you guys are talking about, and I know Dillian White is a big deal, but like he gets injured and you guys are talking about it like we would talk about
it makes
massive
pages.
Yes.
In the UK, it's like, oh my God, Dillian White's out.
Yeah.
Where over here, I'm trying to think of who.
There would be no one.
The comparison to Dillian
Crawford
White.
doesn't get talked about on any radio
This
station.
is the point. So it's killed itself over here for years. And maybe it does need cleaning up. Honestly, maybe it does need cleaning up.
So he said to that point, Dana White did, that we're going to start here. We're going to start in America. We have to fix it here. And if we can establish ourselves here, then we'll be a thing. Just like the UFC was, right? They were a thing here and then it expanded. My question to you is, what do you think? You know some of these people well, and obviously this is most fair to ask them, but since we're here and having this conversation, what do you think Eddie and Frank, and these guys know about this? Like they knew it was kind of the worst kept secret, but like all this being said now, how do you think they feel about all this?
Do you know how many times I thought Frank Warren was done from boxing?
Yeah.
The amount of time I was like, oh, Frank ain't surviving this one. Like impossible. And he always does. He always finds a way. Frank's been doing this boxing thing longer than me and you've been alive.
Yeah.
And Eddie Hearn, through his dad, has been involved in boxing for as long as well. I almost feel like they are right now with their thinking caps thinking this is almost a declaration of war.
Do they feel that way? Because let's be honest, the guy in the middle is still
bankrolling a lot of stuff. This is why I think
changed their business.
This is why I find it very strange. And again, I go back to the word crush.
Yeah.
Because that's the one that kind of stood out in bright lights for me. When I saw the word crush, I was like, are you referring to Matchroom in Queensbury?
Yeah.
Was there not? I actually thought a couple of years ago, I saw at least when Turkey sort of came to the fore, that there was a conversation about him buying Matchroom in Queensbury. And that obviously didn't seem to happen. So I just find the language interesting. But if you're Eddie and Frank, I think it's business as usual. I think the idea of this TKO promotions and what it's going to be will only be that in a decade. Where we think of it as it now runs boxing, I don't think it's going to be as quick as people think.
No.
I think it's going to take time. So I think Eddie and Frank just think, okay, we just do our thing like we've been doing. And if they invite us over for Riyadh season events or if they want to use us, fine. But for now, we're okay because we are well established. And I think that
to a degree, but you have to admit, like Turkey changed their business, right? Dramatically. He changed their business dramatically. They're putting on these.
I don't know if that's true.
Eddie Hearn was at the press conference yesterday. He had no fighters on the card.
But when you say change the business, I look at Eddie and Frank prior to Turkey's involvement, and I still see stadium fights. I still see sold out arenas. I still see fights that did enormous pay-per-view numbers without the presence of sort of Saudi involvement. Obviously, Saudi involvement's helped incredibly. I wouldn't say it hasn't, but I grew up where your friend Carl Froch had 80,000+ at Wembley. AJ's had significant stadium fights doing millions of pay-per-views prior to that in stadiums, not arenas, stadiums for our American viewers. And this guy was doing 90 to 80,000 back to back to back to back. Tyson Fury stadiums. So they've always had stars and they've always done big numbers. So I don't know if it changed their companies to that extent. It's helped and it definitely gave them a push. But I almost think prior to that, they were always big players in boxing, the biggest.
My prediction is, if asked, they'll probably say, this is a sign that boxing is on fire. The business is booming. Everyone wants to get involved.
How concerned do you think both of them?
I don't think concerned.
Because obviously they would have known about this. Yeah. Maybe even prior to them joining up with Riyadh season, they would have known about this information.
I don't think they're concerned, but obviously they perk up and they say, okay, this is interesting. And I ultimately wonder, they're not going to say anything negative. Turkey, they need Turkey. Yeah. And I wonder two things. Does this league, not the mega fights, but the league, do they play ball with others? Or do they say, like, you're fighting for us and only us? Probably that. And also, do these guys here, the old guard, say, like, nah, don't worry, IBF, WBA, WBC, like, we got you. We're still going to be, and they all work together to kind of shun and stiff arm this entity and this vision here. Because the ones that I think should be sweating right now are the sanctioning bodies.
Yeah.
They're the ones.
100%.
Because
I mean, the sanctioning fees alone.
Why do people even... I bring up IBF all the time because they seem to be the ones that really are sticking to their guns on certain things.
Yeah, with their rules.
Why does anyone have to listen to them? Is it just because of the history attached to these belts? Like, why doesn't Matchroom just create their own belt?
No.
Why doesn't Top Rank create their own belt? Why doesn't Queensberry do that?
Because it doesn't have the history. And the fighters won't care. The fighters necessarily won't care about that. But I will agree with you to the extent of why does everyone care about what the IBF's... Like, I'm with you on that. Like, why do they care about what they say?
Right.
I just throw the belt away.
Right.
Like we've seen fighters in the past. Okay, I'm not paying any sanction fees. Goodbye. Like I understand why young fighters coming up who chase the dream of Olympic gold in a world title. I get where they kind of have the love for the organizations because it must be exciting to just win that belt. But for the guys that have won it several times, like Canelo, why does he care what they do? In fact, Canelo kind of dances to his own tune. I mean, I can't remember the last time he had a mandatory. He kind of does what he wants to do. So I don't understand why the old guard even care, but I can understand why the new guard who are desperate to become world champions. I was actually thinking of Shakur Stevenson on the way here. I was thinking he's a freeweight world champion. Does he care? Or is it now just money? Like, does he care about winning another belt? Does he care about becoming under? I don't think he does.
I could see a Shakur joining forces with these
100%.
guys. He's actually that perfect.
The one. He's the perfect.
A Boots?
Yeah.
Those guys that are
Devin
sort of
Haney?
like, yes.
All of those guys that literally have no real promotional contracts with anyone and have done what they wanted to do. I almost feel like everyone actually on that Adeus yesterday, everyone on that top table, I think could sign. I mean, everyone. Ryan, we know, has always had issues with Oscar and Bernard, and he seems okay now, but I think him. Teofimo Lopez, I mean, he can't stop tweeting nonsense about Top Rank.
Right.
He's ready to go whenever they are. So I feel like everyone on that top table could be your first sign-ins for TKO promotions.
By the way, Top Rank leaving ESPN, we talk about, I would not be shocked. As I said, the UFC deal.
I didn't even think about that.
The UFC deal is coming to an end. You want to do business with us still? You got to take this too. And I don't think ESPN will be upset about that. Why wouldn't they want the new shiny toy? Top Rank old guard will get your new promotion. It's backed by Turkey. Dana's involved. Nick Khan's involved. It's done in August. They could slide right in there. Right? So they do the new deal with, the way I feel all this is going is UFC does a deal with Netflix and ESPN. And the major shows go on Netflix, and the fight nights and maybe some other pay-per-views go on ESPN, and they figure it out. And then this boxing league, ESPN shows, and then the 4 mega events on Netflix. It just feels like it's right there. Amazon might be a player, but if I'm UFC,
I find it all weird with regards to the broadcasters, and obviously that's a conversation that no one's really touched on, because again, you just mentioned that there is a potential, and I believe it will happen, that Crawford and Canelo fight on Netflix. It just seems to make sense. All roads lead to that. If I'm DAZN, I'm like, 1 second. We had Crawford on our last fight, and we're doing Canelo in his next fight. We don't get Crawford Canelo. It almost seems like they're getting crumbs of whatever's left for them. Which I find crazy. So if you're DAZN in this and you're
Let's
seeing,
see.
How does it play out for them?
I don't know. I mean, there was an investment recently. This is why I keep trying to tell the audience, and I know it's kind of a, it's an MMA audience to a degree, but we're expanding, we're evolving, uncrowned,
but
all
you've
that.
seen all this play out with the
I was
UFC
telling them from
the jump.
yes.
But they was like, oh, Ariel, what does Ariel know about boxing? Well, you know now.
Yeah.
No,
Thank you for that. That's
no,
the nicest
no,
thing you've ever
no,
said to me. I
that's not.
appreciate that. Thanks for watching this video. Before you go, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button for us. Also, give us a thumbs up, leave a nice comment. These things go a long way. And while you're here, do check out the rest of the channel. We've got live shows and full interviews, clips, and a whole lot more. We're doing big things here, and we appreciate your support very much.